Hey everyone, this is your girl Rico, and I'm back again with another video. You may have guessed it, yes, we're going to be talking about college. This is a bittersweet topic for me because it's been years since I've been out of college, and I have a lot of tips and things to share regarding my experience and some things you might consider now that you're going to school. I'm going to talk about 4 key topics today. One of those topics is what college is and what college is not. Another topic is going to be declaring a major. So that's a big thing that a lot of people struggle with. I remember being asked the question and thinking, what does that mean? What am I going to do? What if I don't know? What if I pick wrong? So many questions in your mind that comes with that question. Number 3 is financials. Financials is also a very big part of college. As you've been hearing in the news, student loans has been a big topic because it's expensive. School can be so expensive. The last topic that I want to talk about, defining a roadmap for your success as you continue on your journey. You may be new to school for the first time, or you may be somebody returning back to school. It all doesn't matter. These are still key tips that you can use as you continue to figure out what you want to do and how to define your path. Number 1, what college is versus what college is not. College is an educational institution where you go to learn in order to pursue something in the future, right? You want to develop your career. You want the fundamentals, the skills to do what you want to do once you get out of school. It is the building block for what you're trying to accomplish. Another thing that college is a place to learn yourself, to network, to meet people, and to learn how to kind of live on your own for the first time, really. If you went straight from home to college, this is really your first time being on your own, maybe doing your own cooking, cleaning, things of that nature. You're really discovering yourself in college. I will say it is a discovery phase and a learning lesson. What college is not is a 4-year party. As much as people want to treat it as such, it is not that. It is not a party. There will be opportunities to go to parties, and that's cool. But just remember the reason why you're there and don't get lost in the moment. There is a end game, right? There is an end period to college. You might hear about a lot of people re-enrolling into college over and over again, but the real thing is that each major or program, they have requirements and criteria. And if you're unable to finish certain classes, or if you keep failing in certain classes, many programs will actually tell you that you can no longer participate in that program or retake that class after failing 3 times. So just be mindful that there is an end game, right? You need to know that it's not forever. Your certain amount of hours, your credits, you graduate, and then you move on to the real world. And if you're not already in the real world working, that's what happens. Lastly, it's not free. And free, I know, is a relative word. And when I say what I mean by it's not free is that someone paid for it. Whether or not it came from your pocket directly, someone is paying the price. It could be a family member who put aside savings and money for you. It could be through a grant, through a scholarship because of sports or grades, or it could just be because you're working a part-time job and you had to figure out how to pay for it. But I bring this up because college should be taken seriously. And I know this is something that goes over a lot of people's heads because, when you're first coming out of high school, it's a whole new world. There's so many things to look forward to. You're excited to venture out, right? You're going to meet so many people, be invited to do many things. But just be mindful that there's a price to pay. And if you're taking out student loans, they're going to be waiting for you whether or not you complete that degree or not. So keep that in mind, and we'll talk more about that when we get to the financial topic. So now we're going to talk about number 2, which is declaring your major. It's interesting because it's like you go through, elementary school, middle school, for those who went through middle school, high school, right? And then you come to this end of the road, right? Where people are deciding what they want to do, where they're going to go, what they want to be, who they want to be, right? These are all scary questions when you're younger because you're like, I have to make such a big decision now. I'm still young. I'm still trying to figure things out. But I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be a scary question. In my experience, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, what I wanted to go to school for, I did a lot of research. I'm not going to say any major is a bad major or a good major, right? Because again, all relative to who you are, how much effort you're going to put into it, your connections, who you know. So in my experience, I know what I didn't want. So that's sometimes a good thing to do, is to think about maybe what you don't want. Create a list of things you know you don't want to do, right? And maybe open up that college catalog. They have them in person and they have them online, and just look through and say, hey, what are these things? What can you do with them? A lot of these programs offer that type of information of the type of jobs or careers or paths that you could take with that major. I ended up going to school for healthcare administration, and the reason why was because, number one, I wanted to do something that helped people in a way, right? I know I wasn't very technical. I didn't love math in school. Not saying that you're going to get away from math. You're going to have to use the fundamentals of math and everything. But I knew I wanted to do something somewhat non-technical, helping people. And I knew that healthcare was something that was always going to be in demand. 4 things that I consider when thinking about my major. Number 1 is passion. Number 2 is reality. Number 3 is balance. And number 4 is research. I'm not saying to pick something that you're going to be miserable doing. You should want to be able to sustain yourself, right? Know that you can, if you have to pay student loans, know that you can pay those student loans when you get out. But also be happy with your choice, right? Like, your choice should make sense to you. And as long as you have done the research on your choice and on your major or what you want to do, and you feel confident in that and you have the tools to be able to make that happen, go for it. But I also noticed it was very interesting. They declared either a second major or a minor in something that they were very passionate about, like dance. And that's also an option. You don't have to pick one or the other. You could do both. But next we're going to be talking about financials, which is number 3. Again, financials are so important when you go to school. You don't just go to school, right? Someone's paying that bill. No matter where that source is coming from, it's being paid for. Talking about family assistance. If you are lucky to have family assistance, that's wonderful, but don't take it for granted. Because whether or not if you don't pass that class, guess what? You still pay that price. It doesn't restart. You don't get refunded. The money is gone, right? And same thing with if you receive a scholarship for your grades or for sports, you have to maintain a certain GPA in order to keep that funding. So if you do fail courses, you have to be careful not to lose your funding. So just be mindful of that when you're entering college, for the first time, for a second time, or just whatever, may be your path. Just be mindful of the courses that you're taking. Get the help that you need when you need it, and speak up. The reality is, we have to pay these loans back, right? You go to school is not free. If you take out student loans, they will be waiting for you. They do give you a 6-month grace period to try to, wait for you to find a job. But I know some people have trouble finding their first job. And that's something I want to talk about too. Defining a roadmap for your success while you're at school and college, whatever it may be for you. Number 1 really there is to focus on community. What does community look like, right? This is something you might have to develop while you're there. This could be, your roommates. This could be a study group. This could be extracurricular activities. I know for me, when I was in school, I try to my best to make friends with my roommates, and for those it might not go anywhere. You might have your highs and buys, but I really put myself out there. I even joined extracurricular activities where I did some a cappella singing for fun, things to lighten up, in between studying, right, and being serious. You will need those outlets to get through school because you're there for years, right? Especially if you're living on campus. If there's somebody you want to talk to in your class, step outside after class, ask them a question, maybe get their number if it feels appropriate, and just connect and make sure you network. It's really important to network. You never know who can help you, when they can help you, and whether or not it may come full circle even after school. It's good habits and good practices. Some good habits and good practices that you may want to try and keep in mind as you're entering school is picking classes at times that make sense to you when possible. I'm saying when possible with an asterisk, because I know some classes you don't really have the opportunity to do that, especially as a freshman. But I know for me, I did not pick any classes before 10 a.m. because I know I don't retain information early in the morning. I am not a morning person. So I tend to pick classes that were late morning or later in the day for me, where I felt like my mind was ready to learn. Try not to miss class if possible. I know there are times where you're sick or you just don't feel like going. But I say this because, again, remember that college is building blocks, right? You want to learn because these are going to be the things, the courses, the experience, the skills that you're going to need to apply after school. So the last thing you want to do is miss classes, miss something important, not take it seriously, get out there in the real world and really have nothing to say to it, right? You want to be able to speak about some of the things that you learn, especially with competitive interviews happening. Having optimal ways to learn, right? Everyone doesn't learn the same way. So I say try to figure out what works best for you. It could be flashcards. It could be YouTube videos. Hint, hint, hint. It could be, I don't know, just going over things with a friend and just making a game out of it, making a song. But you can really discover what works best for you. I know sometimes, like if I had to learn something, I would write it over several times. I would highlight it to burn it into my memory. But these are just really cool things you might want to figure out as you figure out, what's the best method to study, to get your work done, to be very successful in what you're working on. Next, I want to talk about advisors, the do's and the don'ts with advisors. And no offense to advisors, you are great people, but advisors are busy people. They usually have large workloads and are managing hundreds of students, depending on where you're at, and they might miss the details, right? So what I say is try not to leave your life, your college life, in your advisor's hands. I have a story about that because just to give a little background about myself, I initially went to a community college, and thumbs up to community colleges because they don't get great rep, although they are amazing schools, and they make sense financially, and you're taking the same courses. I am 100% all for community college. So for those of you who are going to community college, great for you. Nothing against universities, but community colleges can be very, very competitive as well, and also give you the building blocks you need to have, to be successful. But I say that because I completed a general studies degree, which, is pretty much like an undeclared major, while you're working on your fundamental courses, which are going to be applicable to whatever program that you pick. So I was very strategic in that sense, where I picked a bunch of courses that I knew would transfer over to a university. And I followed this, what they called, it's probably changed now, but they called it back then something called the ARTSYS, which was kind of like a crosswalk to where the courses would map over to, the qualified courses at the university. Well, one semester I made a mistake, and I let my advisor, tell me, what courses to take. Oh, go ahead and take this. It looks great. After I completed that course, something told me, hey, I think I took this class before. I went and checked. Lo and behold, I already had the credit for a course, and I ended up taking the same course with a different name at my university. Because of that error, I ended up graduating one semester later than I should have. So again, I say that to say, be mindful, be your own advisor, as well as get support from your advisor. Make sure you're on top of your courses just as much as they are, okay, if not more. Next, I'm going to talk about work experience do's and don'ts. So something that a lot of parents, and nothing against parents and people who give you advice, but a lot of the times back when I was in school, we were always told, don't work, focus on school. You don't need to do that. Worry about that later. Just finish school. Just do school. I actually personally recommend against that. I'm not saying to stretch yourself thin either, but what I have seen in my experience is that a lot of kids will, obviously not have to worry about working because they might have the financial means to take care of school so they can focus on their studies. But what happens is that, if you're like not at the top of your class, valedictorian, summa cum laude, right? You get out into the working world and you start filling out applications, right? You have this resume, right? Well, what goes on your resume if you haven't worked? Other than the programs that you were a part of at school, right? How do you compete with people who are going for the same job? How do you compete with people who are already in the job market, right? What happens then? I find that a lot of people struggle with getting their first job, and it takes months to find. And this reason is because we may forget that entry level still requires experience. So a lot of programs to kind of counteract that, they have required a lot of programs to, make sure students are doing these like required internships as a part of their program. I know for me, I had to do an internship, but what was cool about the internship that I did was that I kind of created it myself, because guess what? I was already working at a hospital. Go figure, right? I already worked at a private practice before, even completing this program. This was something I had started doing just to kind of prepare myself and to learn and to get some real world experience that was applicable to my studies at the same time. So what I was able to do was talk to one of the managers at the time and say, hey, could you turn my job into an internship that meets the requirements? I ended up talking to the department head for my program, and they agreed to it, and they said, okay, this will work. And they crafted a well-designed program for me to make sure I was getting the needs of an internship to satisfy, my real-world experience, that would prepare me for after graduating college. So I just say that to be mindful, try your best to get an internship if possible. If you're not able to get an internship, it's not the end of the world. Go get a part-time job. And when I say part-time job, I'm not saying something ridiculous. I know you're still in school, right? I'm trying to be realistic here, but I worked 15 hours a week. At most 15 to 20 hours a week, and I was still able to get through my courses, do what I need to do, and most of my work fell on the weekends. So during the week, I was all about school. So those are things I definitely recommend, and I wish this is something that they told people when they were younger. Even seeing people go from undergrad straight into grad school. Again, some people struggle. They'll have a PhD and they'll have all the letters, but there's no work experience. So I'm just saying, be mindful of that. Figure out if there's any ways that you can gain some experience along the way. The internet is at our disposal. Like, we are in this generation where everything is at our fingertips. There really is no excuse as to why we can't figure some things out, especially when the tools are in our hand, literally. You're going to do great. You are amazing. You've made it this far, and it's not for no reason. It's for a reason. And whatever you choose to do, you're going to be great at it. And always give yourself, a pat on the back for getting up and getting out there and trying new things. All right. And that's all for today. I hope you enjoy watching. Don't forget to leave a comment if you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks, guys.